Good to have you here on this Wednesday. Kevin, BJ, and Ben, thanks for making us a part of your day. So much to get to on the show. We'll talk some Georgia football with Dane Young, UGAsports.com. We'll chat with him about Georgia and Charleston Southern. Also look ahead to potential playoff matchups because barring something unforeseen happening in the last 2 weeks against an FCS team and a team that is not very good in Georgia Tech with just 3 wins, you're going to be in the playoff, and you can start to look ahead to that. Also, Rich Stiles will join us, host of the Back Nine Boys Golf Show. You've got the PGA Tour along the coast this week on the Sea Island Golf Course on St. Simon's Island for the RSM Classic. We'll talk to him about that. Also, Nick De La Torre of Gators Territory and the Stadium and Gale podcast. We'll talk to him about Florida having to put up 70 to beat Samford after giving up 52, and also the Gators with Missouri and Florida State coming up down the stretch. How hot is that seat for Dan Mullen? We'll ask him about that. Also, Drew Cronick, head football coach at Mercer. We'll hear from him as Mercer with a chance to win the Southern Conference outright this weekend with a win over East Tennessee State. That is for whoever wins that will be the Southern Conference champion to get the auto bid into the FCS playoffs. So that will be huge, obviously, for Mercer since returning the program back in 2013 to be able to pull that off and get into the FCS playoffs. So he'll join us coming up in the final hour, and Troop Talk returns again this week. Ben sits down with former All-SEC guard for Tennessee and a long time with the Pittsburgh Steelers, Ramon Foster. Will join Ben for Troop Talk coming up in the final hour of the program. So plenty to get to. Hit us up on Twitter at Pigskin Radio. We are streaming live as well, ESPNCoastal.com, and live on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. So your chance to join us, send us a comment, your thought there as well. But we get the college football playoff rankings last night. Not a whole lot to get upset about, I don't think, BJ and Ben. You got Georgia, Bama, Oregon, Ohio State. They all won. You figured they were going to stay there. Cincinnati stays at 5, Michigan at 6, Michigan State 7, Notre Dame slides up to 8. Oklahoma State now comes into the chat there as they've got Texas Tech this week, but finish up with Oklahoma, a couple of wins there, and a Big 12 championship. Might Oklahoma State put their name up into the discussion at least towards the end of the year and say, look, just a one-loss team. I think they would have lost by 2 to Iowa State, that being their only loss. Looked better at the time to have a close loss to Iowa State than it does now, but that will be their only loss. So things could still get interesting if a bunch of teams finish with one loss, or in Cincinnati's case, no losses here in the next 2-3 weeks.
Yes, and I think when you look at the college football playoff rankings, and Kevin, you're right, not a whole lot of change, especially at the top. It's looking at it for what could happen, not what currently is. And I know, Kevin, you've long said, hey, we always get very nervous and we always talk about these hypotheticals in mid-November, but then when the season is finished, normally the poll makes a little more sense. Now, we'll see if that happens this season, but if you look at the poll right now, barring Alabama losing to Arkansas and Auburn, number 1 and number 2 are going to play each other in the SEC championship. Number 4 still has to play number 6. They're going to play each other. And Ohio State, you're talking about, you have to play number 6 and number 7, I believe. So you're talking about a couple of showcase games for Ohio State. Notre Dame would be the team to keep an eye on. And I know they're at 8. They kind of feel like they're on the outside looking in and not really relevant. But you have just one loss. It's to Cincinnati, who's ahead of you. But I think theoretically, for as much as people probably don't want to see Notre Dame in the college football playoff, if, let's say, theoretically, again, Georgia beats Alabama, I've seen some speculation, could they still get in? That would be a big surprise to me. And maybe they should still have an argument, but I don't think the reality here is that if Alabama loses to Georgia to go along with a loss to Texas A&M, who, oh, by the way, lost on Saturday, if you have 2 of those, I don't think they're getting in. Let's say Ohio State drops one of those games, and maybe the Big Ten kind of cancels itself out with some of those teams there at the top. I think Notre Dame could quietly move up. And Ben, when I look at this poll right now, a lot of football left. Remember, everybody else has a conference championship game to play and worry about, a bonus game. Notre Dame does not have that. So I think there's a chance Notre Dame could kind of sit back and watch. I'm not saying they get in, But I think given the matchups that are scheduled for the regular season and then the conference title games, I think there's a chance Notre Dame could be a whole lot closer to that top 4 in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, and BJ, that's what that's what got to be disappointing if you are, a Cincinnati team, because you're saying to yourself, okay, we added Notre Dame to the schedule, beat Notre Dame. We don't have the brand equity. We don't have the national appeal. We don't have people speaking, because I was always told, what do people outside of your fan base, outside of your team say about you? Well, for Cincinnati, that's nothing. People don't say anything. For Notre Dame, BJ, sometimes we forget how big. Listen, Alabama is the best brand of football, not named Georgia. The biggest brand is Notre Dame. And because they get to function on their own, listen, we function outside of the ACC. Even with a loss, the team that we lost to is number 5 in the country. So when you think about it, Notre Dame has the best loss of every team still in it, not named, obviously, Ohio State, because they lost to Oregon. When you think about, but this is the thing too, BJ, Alabama is the wild card, though, because everybody's just chopping it up that if Alabama loses to Georgia in the SEC championship game, they're out. Well, that's what you say. So Alabama is the wild card. Cincinnati sitting there at 5. Notre Dame is the brand, the brand name. I think when you're Ohio State and Oregon, you're going to do what you need to do as far as like to win out, because that's your only path to it. But could a potential 2-loss Alabama still get in? Because this is why I say that. Who's going to say anything of relevance to people? Oh, that's because, BJ, I know we need, and Kevin, this is what we need to stop doing. Either we're doing a blind taste test for 2021. I'm not looking back at 2020, 2018, 2019, or every time we say we're in Cincinnati, we're not looking at it just this year. If Alabama, who has the greatest benefit of doubt there is, loses to Georgia, and it's not going to be on the last-second field goal, if they lose to Georgia, could they still potentially get in? Because like you said, BJ, which I'm coming around with it, Alabama lost to Texas A&M. They're still a better team than Texas A&M. They just lost to them that day. If you lose to the number 1 team in the country, ain't nobody going to, bat an eye about it. So I think that for me, Cincinnati sitting there at 5 makes things interesting, because I don't think they're going to move up because they don't have the brand equity, not because of the brand of football. If Alabama loses to Georgia, they can still potentially get in. And I forgot all about Notre Dame, which I shouldn't. I don't know what in the world. I'm forgetting about them. So Notre Dame, with that 1 loss still out there, you got number 1 playing number 2. You still got some big games down the stretch in these last 3 or 4 weeks of the season. But don't discount the fact that if Alabama loses to Georgia in the SEC championship game, could they still potentially put those guys in?
Look, I think Alabama has to win out. That's again, if everybody stays the same with 1 loss, as many 1-loss teams have, Alabama loses again, they're out. Again, because I think you're going to have a hard time explaining that, why there's a bunch of 1-loss teams potentially undefeated in Cincinnati, and Alabama still gets in. Now, stranger things have happened and all that, but I just don't see that happening. I think you would need a bunch of those teams to go by the wayside, much like Adam Fisher weighed in on Facebook, saying no way a 2-loss Bama gets in over a more deserving 1-loss team. A lot of other 1-loss teams would have to lose first. I agree with that. That's why I think a lot of people are saying Alabama's got to win out to get in there. And again, I think even with 1 loss, they've already shown with 1 loss, they're better than every other 1-loss team out there in the committee's eyes, BJ and Ben. So I think that one's pretty much set and done.
Yeah, in theory, and there are a lot of theoretical possibilities here that are difficult to kind of address, but I think in theory, I would be open to the idea of a 2-loss team getting in over a 1-loss team, because I think you have to look at strength of schedule and values of wins and losses and all that. But I also am talking about what I think will happen. And Kevin, I'm trying to take, Ben, the College Football Playoff Committee at their word. And if you go to the website, the leading kind of the starting point when you talk about evaluation on their website is conference champion. It's being a conference champion. And if Alabama loses, not only will they have 2 losses, they will not have necessarily the same number of kind of truly signature wins that they normally have. They would also not be a conference champion. So I think if Alabama loses to Georgia, and in theory, I think losing to the number 1 team in the country isn't really a loss. I mean, that's losing. You can have a better performance in a losing effort to the number 1 team in the country than a winning effort over an unranked team. And I think that's kind of one of the challenges of evaluation here. but I do not think Alabama, if they lose to Georgia, even if it's close, will get in, because the Texas A&M loss, now that they just lost to Ole Miss, Texas A&M not quite as high in the national polls. You would not be a conference champion, and quite frankly, you haven't had the normal dominance that you've seen from Alabama. Now, if Bama beats Georgia, of course they're in. But Ben, I mean, Florida has had a rough couple of weeks. If Alabama loses by a field goal, when you're evaluating the resume of Alabama, do you look and say, well, they only beat Florida by 2 points, and Florida may not even make a bowl game? So I think, and what Adam chimed in on Facebook, I think if Alabama loses to Georgia, I do not think they would get in, and I think what we're looking at right now, that would be the right call.
I mean, I'm just throwing it out there because I mean, like I said, you got some brands that shape, kind of like shape college football as a whole. Kevin and BJ, I mean, Notre Dame shapes it, Alabama is it, and Cincinnati, well, welcome to the party, but you're not going to move any farther. So, I mean, I'm not saying that Alabama is definitely going to get in, but what I am saying is if they do, they're going to find a way to validate putting them in. So, once again, Georgia being undefeated helps them because they did not get no help in the SEC East this year at all. Alabama, I mean, they didn't get. Ole Miss is 2 losses, but everybody else seems to be kind of like understand they already bowl eligible. They kind of losing more games down the stretch. But this is why we watch. And once again, until the college football playoff committee expands it, teams like Cincinnati, Baylor, take TCU back in the day, UCF, they're going to be on the outside looking in, not because of their brand of football, because of their brand, period. You got to have a big enough brand because let's face it, Kevin and BJ, the reason why they don't want to tell us why they, quote, picked the last 4, because they don't want to show us how biased they are. No, show us how biased we are and how we look at certain teams. We say, oh, that's just this and that's just that. Right now, Cincinnati is just the Bearcats. They are not Cincinnati, a big enough brand to have that brand equity nationally. So until it goes to 6 or 8, Kevin and BJ, they're going to find themselves on the outside looking in.
Again, we're going to see how this thing continues to play out. A lot of big football games that we're going to see head-to-head amongst those teams in the top 10 still to come down the stretch. We've got more to come here on 3 and Out. Dane Young, UGAsports.com, will join us. You got the audio from Kirby at halftime of the Florida game getting out there. I will talk to Dane about that. And, of course, these final 2 ball games, Charleston Southern, Georgia Tech, as Georgia prepares for the SEC Championship and most certainly the college football playoff. This is 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Good to have you here, 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Kevin, BJ, and Ben. Glad you are with us here on this Wednesday. A lot to get to still on the show, but Georgia getting ready for Charleston Southern this weekend, and certainly looking ahead towards the SEC Championship, potential playoff matchups out there as well. And I know a lot of social media making the rounds, some audio from Kirby at halftime there at Florida. Got a lot of folks listening to that as well. Dane Young, UGAsports.com, steps in to talk about all of that. Dane, welcome. How are you?
I'm doing well, guys.
Are you surprised that the Kirby stuff kind of got as big as it? To me, and we were talking about it, been playing at Florida, and look, that's locker room stuff to get teams fired up. I mean, what was your kind of reaction when it kind of got out there and everybody started commenting on it? Did we lose you? Think we may have lost. We had you there for a second. Dane, can you hear us? We'll try to get him back here on. Having a problem hearing him there, but obviously you had the audio. Ben Kirby getting, we'll say fired up there at Florida. Say, hey, we're gonna go out there and we're gonna physically break them. We're gonna break them. We're gonna make them quit. I mean, that's stuff that happens in college football. I know. I mean, obviously, people say, "Well, what about the language?" Well, I mean, that's also college football, right? I mean, that's stuff that happens. And again, people gets out and people start reacting that one way or another. I'm like, that's a guy. If you've watched Kirby Smart from Alabama and his time at Georgia, that's his personality, right? I mean, you should expect that kind of stuff.
Well, yeah, I was going to say that, Kevin. Like most people have never obviously either heard Kirby Smart at a press conference, seen him coach on the sideline, or know him at all. Like I've seen Kirby Smart. He's a fiery coach. He is the epitome of a fiery coach when you're talking about college football. And you see the way his team plays. He says it is 0-0. We want to go out there. We want to break them. I would hope that he says that. I would hope that he feels that way about his team. We have gotten beside ourselves as far as just lovers of college football and just viewers of the game when we start saying, wait a minute, did you hear what he said? Yeah. Like, it sounds like he meant it. Yes, he means everything he says. And when you think about the way Georgia plays, they play like that. They play like they're trying to break the soul and the will of the team they're playing. So that's just normal that's normal football one-on-one from a fiery coach who wants to make sure his team never ever takes one play, 1 second of the game for granted. I don't care if it's against my Florida Gators.
Yeah, again, well, I believe we've got Dane Young back here on the show. Dane, welcome back to 3 and Out. How are you?
Man, I'm well. Apologies for whatever phone connection happened there. It wasn't as good of a recording as what Kirby Smart had in that locker room, I guess.
I guess not. What was your reaction to it? Again, we kind of went around the show here. Kind of thought it wasn't any big deal, really. Are you surprised it kind of got as much steam out there as it did?
Well, I think I've talked to a couple former players, and their reaction was, got out. However, fired up about what he said. Look, I mean, that happens in a locker room. Like anyone, I haven't seen a single person that's like, oh, the language is like that. They were fired up to go beat Florida, and it's a physical game, and that's what happened. Overall, I think people are excited to get a glimpse into what that locker room is like.
Dane, is there any account for kind of where that came from, or kind of where the recording was leaked from at this point?
I haven't seen anything. The only thing that I saw, SEC network was there, and they were recording. Don't know if it came from anyone involved in that. Otherwise, it'd have to be from within the program at Georgia. They keep tabs on who's in there. I'll tell you this. It won't be a fun day for whoever it is, and that's found out.
I mean, obviously, when it comes to a guy like Kirby Smart, he's a fiery guy. If you go back to when he played at Georgia, he was probably a fiery player. Why do people get so, beyond themselves when they see a coach not just being fiery, but showing emotion to his players?
Because they're not as competitive as he is. I mean, that's the one thing I listen to, and I'm like, I'm not as competitive about anything in this world as that man is about probably anything, but especially football. So there's a different level, right, that you have to get your mind to go through that process. It's an unnatural thing, so it requires some unnatural energy, and Kirby Smart has it. He's passionate about it, and to see what it takes to get yourself to that level, I think you appreciate it. You live in the moment. And look, the other thing is, what if intentionally was leaked for some recruiting purposes? I'm not willing to. Kirby Smart didn't know this would get out there. I have no idea.
Yeah, going to be interesting to see how that goes. But Dane, to the field, Georgia's got Charleston Southern this weekend. Obviously, that's another tune-up week. How do you think Georgia uses this week? Is it to get Stetson on and off the field, get some of those key guys out, let JT Daniels, some guys get some reps, maybe even get down into the Carson Becks and Brock Vandegrift's here who haven't played a whole lot and maybe still have a couple of games left on that 4 games that they can play? What's kind of the mindset for Georgia this week and how they approach Charleston Southern?
It's all the above. It's get healthy. It's avoid potential injuries going forward. But you have to remember there's some youth on the offensive line, especially that continues to gel together. Cedric Van Pran, I know he's been the starter virtually all season since Tate Ratledge went down against Clemson. But he's still relatively new, so you want to get him reps against another defense. Broderick Jones at left tackle. If Jamari Sawyer's not back, I don't think that they'll rush Sawyer back until Georgia Tech. And so that's another young guy. He played really well last week against Tennessee. Beyond that, you're looking at receivers that have come back in recent weeks with Jermaine Burton and Karis Jackson being fully healthy, getting them back, in the timing. The main thing with this week, get in, get out, be healthy.
Dane, how impressive has it been to you that Georgia's been able to not only climb to number 1 in the polls, but affirm that every single week? I mean, you're winning by 17, 24, 30 every single week. How remarkable has that consistency been?
It's been remarkable in the sense of the adversity that the teams had to go through. So the Adam Anderson off the field stuff, George Pickens didn't even make it into the season before an injury. You had 4 wide receivers go out, 2 offensive linemen. Georgia's just shown that depth that Kirby Smart has generated on this roster is the reason that they're in championship contention right now. But there are a couple other plays, things that play here too. It's a relatively easy schedule. Georgia has not had to be tested overall. The SEC is tough, yes, but the East is the easier side than the West. Clemson, they survived that game and kind of built momentum from there. Stetson Bennett is better than he was last year. And so that made the quarterback situation a little easier when JT Daniels went down. And beyond that, you look around college football, and I look at this with the Heisman race too. There aren't like super elite teams, and Georgia, I think, is as close to that as anything this year. But there's not an Alabama from last year or LSU from the year prior. This is kind of a very balanced year in college football where I don't see the superpower involved in this. And if there is one, it's Georgia.
How much has Stetson Bennett meant to this team, not just this year, but last year? Obviously, it's always going to be, he doesn't have the measurables. He's not 6'2", but the guy just, he's available. He goes out there and gets it done. He's not going to necessarily light up the box score, not because he can't, but because he doesn't have to. What is going to be Stetson Bennett's, the memories of him, even though they still got some games to go, and what he's meant to this team the last couple of years?
It's probably been tough for him and his family just because, like, everyone says, he doesn't have the measurables. He was a walk-on. He's not a walk-on anymore, obviously. There's a lot of chatter that goes along when you're the starting quarterback at Georgia, especially when a lot of people think you shouldn't be the starting quarterback at Georgia. And I think that he's handled that so gracefully. And I think, man, he's an athlete. He's a really good athlete, and he's a good quarterback. And there's a lot of teams in college football that would love to have him. His legacy is going to be built over the next few weeks, right? If he goes and leads Georgia to its first national championship since 1980, he automatically goes down as one of the best quarterbacks in Georgia history just for having gone through that gauntlet that so many other teams could not do. And then when you add in his personal story to it, I mean, a lot of people say that there's going to be a movie out of this guy's story if it ends up that way. And, this is a family that loves Georgia. His parents have been season ticket holders for 25 years. So it would be quite a story for the state as a whole, but especially for, your guys' area as well.
Dane Young, UGAsports.com, joining us here on 3 and Out. And Dane, I know Kirby and company won't look ahead, but I mean, the way it's stacking up, you've got Charleston Southern this week, a 3-win Georgia Tech team next week. It pretty much is assumed, even if they were to lose in the SEC championship game, they're still in the playoff at this point. Who are some of the playoff matchups you think Georgia might square off against? And if you're Georgia, who would be the best team you kind of want to face in the semifinals?
I think every team, if you look at how results have played out, would want to play Cincinnati if they were to find their way in there. And you would think if Cincinnati did, it'd be at that fourth spot. So, if Georgia were to win in the SEC championship, perhaps that happens. You already played them last year up in the Peach Bowl, and that was a tight game. I mean, that was the game that Georgia needed to the very last second with Jack Podlesny's game-winning kick. But I think Georgia's a little bit better this year. I don't know that Cincinnati's playing as well as they did at that point last year. When you look at other teams, I look at it and I think Georgia would like its chances, assuming, Alabama wouldn't be a rematch immediately, however that would turn out. I think Ohio State's the only one you're looking at and you're saying that's the one I'm probably afraid of, because the offense at Ohio State has the potential to be as explosive as anything else in the country. I don't think other teams, I don't see Oregon's offense matching up well against Georgia's defense. So I think Georgia matches up pretty well with most teams that would potentially play.
Dane, couple of regular season games left here for the Dogs. Finally, where does Kirby Smart still want to see improvement? Where does Georgia still have to get better, if anywhere?
Pass protection is a big deal. It's one reason that Stetson Bennett has remained the starter this whole time, especially at the guard position. So I think some continuity needs to happen there to shore up the pass protection. And, some teams, Tennessee, you saw it with Florida in the first quarter. Stetson was running around for his life. But I do think that Stetson is probably better when he is on the run. And so maybe he should just do that, more frequently anyway. Maybe more of that Johnny football style of football. Georgia's a conservative team by nature, but there's that. And then I think first quarter against Tennessee, you saw cornerbacks be tested on the edge, especially deep down the field. I expect more teams will try to do that. So you could definitely see a scenario where Georgia's championship hopes rest on Keely Ringo and Darion Kendrick.
Dane Young, UGAsports.com, our guest here on 3 and Out. Dane, appreciate the time. Thanks so much.
Always a pleasure. Thanks, guys.
And Georgia has Charleston Southern coming up this weekend, and then Georgia Tech, and then the SEC championship game in 3 weeks. So there's a lot more football left for Georgia as they come down the stretch. We'll come back. We'll look ahead. Tomorrow night, Falcons are back at it after one of their worst performances ever. You get the Patriots, and you may be missing your best offensive weapon at this point. We'll get to that when we return. It's 3 and Out, Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Good to have you here, 3 and Out. On this Wednesday, Kevin, BJ, and Ben, Falcons and Patriots tomorrow. Falcons coming off. We talked to D. Orlando earlier in the week from the AJC coverage. Falcons said, look, I've been covering the Falcons a long time. That's the worst performance. That's the worst performance he's seen since going back in the early 2000s. So it's bad. 43-3. Terrible. And now you get a short week and a game time decision on Cordarrelle Patterson. And you say, well, how much does that hurt you? Cordarrelle Patterson, your second leading rusher in terms of attempts. He is your leading rusher in terms of yardage. He's got, I believe, 12 or 13 more yards on 11 less carries than Mike Davis. So it's been pretty even as far as yardage. And he is your second leading receiver behind Kyle Pitts. So if he can't go, it starts to get real shallow, real quickly for the Atlanta Falcons there on offense.
Yeah, Ben, Patterson right now has almost 500 yards receiving and over 300 yards rushing. So he's been incredibly productive, historic production in some ways. But that's concerning. It's especially concerning when you think about just the struggles that, the whole team has had. No momentum, offensively. I mean, just for point of reference, the Jacksonville Jaguars average more yards per game than the Atlanta Falcons. The Jacksonville Jaguars are at 332.7 yards per game, and the Falcons are at 324.2. So the Jaguars are getting an extra first down per game compared to the Falcons. And I just go back to the offensive line. I think you've got to find a way to stabilize that front. And Ben, I don't know. Is that something you can do with scheme? Is that something you can do with play calling? Could we see more screens, more draws? Can that be a way to kind of counter a strong pass rush? But yeah, if Patterson can't go, you're going to have to adjust to something. And maybe this is the game where Mike Davis finally gets 20 carries and can run north-south between the tackles. And maybe that in itself helps stabilize the offensive line. But how do you account for or adjust for an offensive line that's really having a hard time?
I would say the first thing you're gonna have to do, you're gonna have to go to the quick passing game because, obviously that speeds everything up, but that kind of keeps Matty Ice out of harm's way. Then, BJ, you mentioned something with the screen game. Get more creative with the screen game. If you've seen, let me say it this way, if it has been unfortunate for you to have to pay good money for your cable to have been watching this Atlanta Falcons offense, you were saying to yourself, hey man, where's the creativity? Yeah, it's like rice with no gravy on it. Like rice is good, but it's better with gravy. So I just think right now, BJ, and you just said something that doesn't happen in sports. Mike Davis is going to all of a sudden, no the hell he ain't, because he couldn't do it with Cordell. He ain't going to just, Cordell's not here, I got to do it. Now, he's going to be forced to get more carries. But when I watch Atlanta, I'm asking, where is the creativity? Where is trying to be able to put guys in position, have Kyle Pitts coming in motion that he ain't just sitting there being a sitting duck. So try to make sure that safety in that corner to that side going to play him over the top by getting chipped by that defensive end. And I know we're talking about Cordell. Cordell plays offense. What about this defense? AJ Terrell hasn't given up more than 30 yards a game this year. And it doesn't even matter. It doesn't even seem like it. So yes, BJ, are you going to have to get more, production out of guys when one guy goes down, other guys have to step up? Yes. Matty Ice he's giving you all he got. He really, really is. But I just think that and you only call plays according to the personnel that you have. Think about your most productive player plays two positions on offense. Cordell played receiver and running back. Now, what people don't forget about Cordell, he's even better at special teams. But they're like, dude, we can't even play him there anymore. So I do think you're going to have to get more creative in what you want to do on offense. The screen game could be that, because the one thing about this New England Patriots team, they've been playing really, really well as of late. They're going to get after Matty Ice. They're going to blitz him. They're going to force him to do what he wants to do quicker than he wants to do it. And these guys can adjust. Dare I say, I know it was 43-3 last week. Ooh. We could be standing up at a score potentially like that because this first quarter is going to have a lot to do for the rest of this game.
And Mac Jones really been playing well. You talk about how bad this Falcons team has been at times, BJ. You look at the statistical measures for the Falcons, and they don't win in hardly any of them. And a lot of them just don't make a whole lot of sense. You look at the Falcons running the football. Mike Davis is your supposed feature back. He has 11 more carries than Cordarrelle Patterson, and Cordarrelle Patterson has more yardage than him. That's a problem for a guy that's not supposed to be your full-time running back. Receiving. Anybody care to take a guess? I know I gave away some of the answers. Who the top 4 receivers are for the Falcons right now? Just for the season, and we'll show you like how it gets bad from there. But
I mean, I would say Pitts, Gage, Zacchaeus, and Sharp, maybe, or
that
Ridley.
That is an interesting thought. No, leaders in receptions for the Atlanta Falcons. Kyle Pitts is 1. Cordarrelle Patterson is 2. Calvin Ridley, who is not playing, is 3. And who's number 4? That would be Mike Davis with 24 catches. So 2 of your top leading receivers in terms of catches are your running backs. That means you're checking down. That means guys aren't getting open. And again, Ben, you point to some of these things. The Falcons offense, to couple along with a bad defense. Falcons have scored 19 touchdowns this year. The Falcons have allowed 19 passing touchdowns on defense alone. That ought to tell you just how bad they have been at times here in 2021. Passing-wise, Matt Ryan, if you just look at what Matt Ryan does versus the guys passing the ball opponents-wise, it's not that bad. But running the football, man, it is just night and day difference in what they've allowed all season long for this Falcons team. And offensively, they've been bad. And it looks like you've gone from a team, Ben, with some maybe the most weapons on offense in the league, where you're looking at 3-4 wide receivers, a couple of tight ends, to now you are looking around saying, my 2 best targets might be my running backs and Kyle Pitts, who is a tight end in his first year figuring it out and has 1 touchdown.
It's going to be
the drop-off has been amazing to kind of sit back and watch.
It's going to be a long year for this Falcons team because you have to gel. I mean, really not being in the offense really, really hurts this offense because you take away the deep threat. I know we become box score. I know you live in the box score because the story that the box score tells. I'm always looking for 2 things when it comes to Matty Ice and when it comes to the receivers. I'm looking at completion percentage and how many touchdowns, because touchdowns affect the bottom line. Guys, man, he had 10 for 125 and they lost by 15 because you got to get in the end zone. You have nobody right now that threatens the opposing team in the end zone for this Falcons team. Cordarrelle Patterson is gone. Kyle Pitts scored his 1 touchdown. I think he did it in London, so I don't think he's ever scored in the States. And it's not his fault. Kyle Pitts can be more of a weapon. I just think that when you talk about an offense that doesn't have a lot of, they don't have a lot to work with. I mean, Kevin, when you mentioned that 2 of my top four receivers are running back / receiver,
right.
Cordarrelle and Mike Davis, and 24 catches for a running back is mostly just little dump downs or screens. I know how it is to be on an offense that has no.
I mean, really,
identity.
2 of your top 3 would be running backs if you consider that Calvin Ridley is not playing. I mean, that takes it to another level. I
just think that Arthur Smith is going to have to really, really understand that, you're going to have to really, really go deep into the playbook, and you're going to have to challenge guys. I was on a team that had 21 to 22-year-olds, and we were the veterans on the team in my first and second year. We had to grow up. Matty Ice has given you all he can give you. Kyle Pitts, I mean, yeah, he's good for fantasy. And, and the thing about Mike Davis, hey, you are the running back. So I think really being out, Cordarrelle being out, you're going to have to find a way to step up, because without any offensive identity, you don't even have the run game to go back to. You ain't good at pass protection. And we're only giving you the problems on the offense. We ain't even, Kevin talked about the 19 receiver touchdowns given up by the defense. You're going to have to find lightning in a bottle, and you're going to have to hope you can ride that wave for 4 quarters. Because the thing about the Falcons teams is, forget the fact they don't have an offensive identity. They don't have an identity, period. You don't know what to expect from them. So unfortunately for them, they're going to have to figure out tomorrow. We'll see what happens, but that's why they pay them. That's why you got to go out there and prepare. We'll see what happens.
But you know what's amazing, though, Kevin? Just let me add this real quick, because so many of the statistical storylines around the Atlanta Falcons are bad. You just had one of your worst losses in franchise history. You lost by 40 points. Okay, your offense is worse than the Jacksonville Jaguars. On defense, you're last in the league in sacks, and you're second to last in interceptions. With all that said, if you can beat a rookie quarterback at home tomorrow night, you're 500. And that's pretty amazing to think about, that you can't run the football, you can't block, You can't get to the quarterback. You can't. I mean, there are so many things that are going wrong. You just lost 43-3, and if you can beat a rookie quarterback at home tomorrow night, not saying they will, but if you can, you're 500. I mean, think about that opportunity for all that's for all the things you've struggled with. A win makes you 500 tomorrow night.
I will say this. I know I give a lot of feedback when it comes to these Falcons. They don't have bad players. I think they have a bad team. I've been on both. I've experienced both. I don't think they got bad players. Maybe the scheme is too much right now. I've been on a bad team before. Right now, they're just a bad team because they're not working well collectively. They start working a little better collectively because now, BJ and Kevin, it's one thing to love me, you know what I'm saying, because you chose me. Now you got to love me because I'm all you got. And these guys right now, this is all you got on offense. Find a way to get it done. Try to exploit Mac Jones. And BJ, you're right. If you win a game for at least a week, you don't have to hear the boo birds. But if you lose, we'll see.
We've got more to come here on 3 and Out on this Wednesday. Love to hear from you at Pigskin Radio on Twitter. Find us on Facebook and at YouTube as well. We're coming back with more 3 and Out. Good to have you back here, 3 and Out. Kevin, BJ, and Ben. You mentioned the Falcons and Patriots tomorrow. Patriots, a 7-point favorite going into this ball game tomorrow. So, despite all of that, BJ, we talked about all their flaws for the entirety of last segment. You can be 500, and you're only a touchdown dog, despite all of that, to a young man at quarterback who's really playing well, Mac Jones.
Yeah, but that's a pretty big line for a pro football game. Normally you see lines in college that are 14, 20, 28. You don't see that in the league. You see more, 3-4 point lines. So a fairly big line. But Ben, come on, man. Listen, you had a terrible performance last week. You're at home. You're on prime time. You're facing a rookie quarterback. Got to be a bounce back game to a certain extent tomorrow night, right?
You would hope so. You would hope so, BJ. And look, you can't just turn on the sports. You separate your separation from from your preparation. I get those things. Alignment and assignment. You got to anticipate the situation. You got to focus on it. You got to focus on the down and distance. You got to execute, and you got to finish. All these things you see around, all these billboards around the facility. Dude, take pride in what you do. It's almost like I didn't like going to watch the tape knowing that I could care less about being the reason that we win. I refuse to be the reason we lose. And that's how I played, because I got to face these dudes. And all this keying around the facility is cool until they realize, dude, can't depend on the undependable. You don't want to get that label of you can't be dependent upon. So I think for the Falcons, they doing it for themselves, understanding that, look, 5-5 after 10 games is respectable when you talk about everything they don't have on this offense. But you lose because Mac Jones ain't playing like no rookie. Be careful, because Bill Belichick, he can still coach, ladies and gentlemen.
And he's on a mission, obviously. A lot of folks talking about, Tom Brady last year. Bill Belichick's out there to say, look, I can get it done without Tom. It's fine. He can still coach. But, yeah, I think the Falcons obviously going to be a task, a big challenge coming up tomorrow night, BJ. But you got to figure out a way to get something positive going. I mean, you lose another one, 35-10 or something like that. There's going to be a lot of folks going, like, what else can you do at this point, Falcons? You just flat bad in so many areas. We got more to come. Take 3 right around the corner. We'll Good to be back here, 3 and Out. A lot to get to here in hour number 2. We will hear from Nick De La Torre, Gators territory and Stadium in the Gale podcast. We'll talk Florida with Missouri this weekend, and Florida State to finish up. Where is Dan Mullen in relation to that hot seat? We'll hear from him in about 20 minutes. Also, Rich Stiles will join us, host of the Back Nine Boys Golf Show. You got the PGA Tour along the coast this week for the RSM Classic out on St. Simon's Island. So we'll talk to Rich Stiles about that coming up in just a little bit as well. But that being said, let's take 3 here on 3 and Out. We're talking job opportunities here today, fellas. In college football, I'll give you 2 jobs. You tell me which one you think is the better job. And you can take into account a number of things: recruiting, pressure to win, what have you. Better job, LSU or Oklahoma?
Wow. And a lot of rumors on social media over the last, 24 hours potentially about Lincoln Riley and would he be, is he a candidate at LSU, and how do you view those 2 jobs compared to one another? Two of the great programs in college football. I mean, I think sometimes we forget just how dominant and incredible Oklahoma's been. Oklahoma's in the top 5. I believe they're 4th in all-time wins in college football, and they've been a regular in the college football playoff, Heisman Trophy winners, the NFL draft. I mean, Oklahoma, and they're moving into the SEC, but even before that, Oklahoma is one of the, tier 1 college football programs in the country. But I think there's a different level of maybe resources even at LSU. I believe Ed Orgeron was making over $9 million, which was second, I believe, only to Saban. So you're talking about a program that can pay, will pay as much as anybody in the country. So I think Oklahoma probably the better program when you think about the history of the 2 schools. But I think it's close, it's tough. But for better job, if you want to get as much of a salary, as big of a salary as possible, I think your choice has got to be LSU.
BJ, when it comes to prestige tradition, you ain't gonna get much better than Oklahoma. But we ain't talking about that. We're talking about the better job. And it's what have you done for me lately? Oklahoma's coming over to, you can't beat them, join them. They're coming over to the SEC. You know why? Because they want some of that prestige. They want some of that 24-hour a day, 7 days a week coverage. But it is LSU. Because number one, I got to win everywhere. I got to do it within 4 years, BJ, and nothing about the history of LSU makes me think I can't, because Orgeron is the worst of the 3 coaches that won it, but he has the best team of the 3 coaches that won it, and we run the state of Louisiana. They run it. Oklahoma probably have to deal with Oklahoma State and, Texas trying to take their recruits. Nobody's taking recruits from LSU out of the state. You're going to be able to get some of the best talent, and $9 million speaks volume. $9 million? I mean, I remember when a high-paid coach was $1 million, $2 million, $9 million. So, because at the end of the day, yes, you want to look back on your resume and say, "Oh man, remember we did this?" No, you want that bank account to be like, "You see that? The fact that one team can give you $9 million, and yes, you got to deal with the SEC West, but don't money supposed to compensate for the nonsense? $9 million compensates for it. If I got to deal with that, I will go with LSU because number one, I don't have to place more on myself as a head coach. I get the coordinators. So I'm more of an overseer than a guy that has to go out there with X and O's. And I get paid $9 million big ones to do it. I don't know what the state tax is in Louisiana, but I'll take $9 million to deal with it. I'll take $9 million for the booth. So give me LSU for what have you done for me lately? Yes, you have to deal with the SEC West with Oklahoma. I mean, what if Oklahoma comes up to the SEC and they're in the SEC West? Huh? Can't even escape it. So yes, BJ, for me, it's LSU.
I mean, I think they're going to go to the pod system, but we'll see. Well, that's yet to, yeah. Part of what you say, what is the better job? You have to say that, realizing that at the very least, in 2 years, is going to be in the SEC, maybe a little sooner than that. But I think it's Oklahoma. There are, again, much like a lot of the SEC, you're the state flagship school. I don't know how many recruits you're losing to Oklahoma State, even though they've been a very good program under Mike Gundy. And you're going into the SEC. You can win the state. You can win the national championship at Oklahoma. I think to me right now, that's the better job. That is the better job right this second. I would say Oklahoma better than the LSU job. Moving along, Virginia Tech or Washington. Both jobs are open. Virginia Tech, the Hokies in Blacksburg, or Washington?
And we talked about the Virginia Tech job yesterday with the news surrounding Justin Fuente. I think there's a lot of potential there. That program was on a national stage and was really dominating, Kevin. The ACC, you and I went to a couple of ACC championship games where they were there. But I think Virginia Tech has a lot to offer. But I think if you look at maybe the history of the two programs and recent history, I might lean Washington. Folks forget this. Washington was in the college football playoff in 2016, and there haven't been – I mean, we've talked about this before with the lack of parity at the top. There have only been, like a dozen, if that, teams that have made the college football playoff, and Washington is one of them. Washington has made the college football playoff within the last 5 years. It doesn't seem like it. It doesn't feel like it. You don't think about them when you mention college football playoff teams. But in 2016, they were there and lost to Alabama. Well, so do most teams. But I think you have that. Washington also won a national championship in the 90s. They had an early national championship. They split with they did that in the early 90s. Ask Georgia Tech. They had a championship that they split with Miami. So Washington at least has a modern national championship to go along with the college football playoff. I'm a big fan of the Virginia Tech program. That 99 team, one of the greatest teams I've ever seen. I think both are big-time jobs, but if I had to pick one, I would lean Washington.
Yeah, BJ, I know Washington has been there as of late as far as like the college football playoff. But as you mentioned, no one remembers it and no one cares. And that's the thing about when you play games when nobody else is watching besides your fan base because they have it too late in the day, and you in the conference that really they got some big names but not enough luster. I'm gonna go with Virginia Tech. I mean, Virginia Tech is on what? Kevin, you always talking about Virginia Tech is on the side of the ACC that they've had 7 different winners in 7 different years. Virginia Tech could be. I mean, this is a down year for the ACC, and Virginia Tech could potentially be in a better position this year. I just think that the ACC just brings a lot more prestige. You're going to be, it's the road less traveled. I don't have to deal with as much as a UW would probably have to do with an Oregon or maybe a USC or maybe a UCLA if they're good. I think that because the ACC is itself and Virginia Tech is a big brand, I just think, you have to deal with recruiting as far as like UVA, coming down to, UVA as far as like, I'm going to go with Virginia Tech. I think that the ACC is definitely on the rise. Yes, Clemson makes that conference better, but Virginia Tech, they care about what happens in Blacksburg. Those guys have been to an ACC championship game. They haven't been to a college football playoff. When I'm looking at who has a role less travel, I go with Virginia Tech, and I think that because of the brand equity that they bring, they're gonna be trying to bring a little bit more fire as far as accessibility to this school, like a Virginia Tech more. You see what the SEC does as far as like putting the spotlight on it. I'm gonna go with Virginia Tech because, like I said, I like UW, but and BJ, I know we do this. Who has the most notable player? If Mark Brunell walked in and was speaking to the Huskies, does he have to be introduced? Yes. They're like, ladies, if the mic went out, they're like, who is this? What's it? No. Michael Vick walks in, people they doing the old Fred Sanford, Elizabeth, I'm coming home. So for me, give me Virginia Tech, even though Shane Beamer is probably gonna stay, with them Gamecocks.
No, Virginia Tech, better job. And again, you got, I look at it from this. As been said, easier chance to win in the ACC, easier chance to recruit, I think, at Virginia Tech, even though you're in kind of a rural area there in Blacksburg. Washington, you're probably going to get most of the best players in Washington, even though a couple years ago, Jacob Eason said he'd rather go all the way across the country than stay and play in Washington. But you're going to have to go down to California and get players. If I'm Virginia Tech, you got the Hampton Roads area, hot recruiting bed. Several schools in your conference are in North Carolina. You got Georgia Tech in your conference, so you can go down to Atlanta and get players. Florida's on the map. Pennsylvania's on the map with Pitt in there. You can go around and try to recruit players from. I just look at it and say inside your conference reside schools in 3 of the top 5 recruiting areas in the country. So you can go and get players relatively close. You're in a competitive ACC where the turnaround could be very quick. I think Virginia Tech's a better job. Washington, not saying you can't get it done, but you got to deal with Oregon, USC potentially coming back, UCLA. You're going to have to go into California and take your share of players. Meanwhile, the Utahs and Cals and all of them are trying to do the same thing because there's only so many D1 players in Montana and Washington and Idaho for you to go get. and try to bring into your program. So to me, it's Virginia Tech, better job. Finally, take 3, better job. Miami, not open yet, but the AD just got fired. So if you're bringing in a new AD and you're not really living up to expectations, good chance that job could come open. So Miami or Southern Cal.
Wow. I mean, that is rough. You're talking about elite programs that have had modern dynasties, programs that, tell the story of college football. My gut says Miami, and I think about the U. I think about the pipeline to the pros. I think about, what's so tough is you can say all the same stuff about SC. I mean, when I was in high school, college, Miami was dominating college football, but right after that, so was SC. I just think, Kevin, you talk about recruiting. The best high school football in the country is played probably in Florida, in South Florida, and Miami has been able to recruit their backyard primarily for a long time and have consistent championship success. Now, you've not had that the last couple of years, but Mark Richt a few years ago, you won 10 games. You were undefeated in November. So it's not like there hasn't been a modern precedent for success for Miami. I just think Miami's program, doesn't have the long-standing tradition, of course, of SC, but with the recruiting there, I kind of think they're a sleeping giant, in the ACC Coastal. Kevin, you've talked about it. I mean, who do you have to overcome in the ACC Coastal? If Clemson takes a step back, who do you have to overcome overall? And I think, who knows what's going to happen, but with a change at athletic director, sometimes they change and head coach follows that. I feel like everything I say about Miami could also be said about Southern Cal. So it's tough. You could go either way, but I just think there's something special about the U.
Wow, when you talking about brand, I mean, I like USC. I do think they BJ, they are a team that they are a coach away. But I just think about the fact that, Coach Helton, everybody was thinking, where's Coach Helton going to go leaving USC? Is he going to go to Georgia Southern? Meaning, Kevin talked about Jacob Eason coming from, Washington to Georgia, either end up back in Washington. I mean, the fact that USC don't know who their coach is going to be. That's how crazy their brand has gotten. Like, I don't know who our coach is going to be. But for me, it is Miami. Ed Reed, he is the greatest safety, to me, to ever play football. The best safety I've ever seen also went to Miami, and that would be Sean Taylor. Ed Reed is on the staff at Miami, and no one cares. You know why? Because Miami isn't good. But BJ, I remember when, like you said, Miami, Jonathan Vilma right down there, Andre Johnson, right? I mean, they getting them, they plucking them. They just going to the neighboring high schools and they plucking them. They are not that far away from that. They're not that far away from that. So, and once again, they're in the ACC. Miami is when people start saying it, Miami is a season away from going to the ACC championship game, getting back in the national spotlight, and only God knows what that's going to do for their recruiting. You talk about a hotbed. The hottest bed there is in high school recruiting is the state of Florida. There is a player from the state of Florida on every college football team that has football. I can guarantee you that. The problem is they leaving Miami. They don't want to go to Miami. So let me get this straight. You talking about one of the best cities, and one of the best, and one of the, not the easiest conference, but a road less traveled conference. The weather, the atmosphere. No, where you going? Where you gonna go, young man? Oh man, I'm gonna go to Baylor. It's to me. So to BJ, I think it's Miami because Miami is going through an identity crisis, but they're not that far away. Just like I said, if USC is a coach away, I love Manny Diaz, but Manny Diaz ain't it. It's just not, because you know what, Manny Diaz, know what tradition he's carrying on, Kevin? Not winning that is because, unfortunately, I'm on them 30 for 30 Miami teams that I had to play against. So, yes, yeah. I think it is Miami at this point.
I mean, if it was 1980, 1990, I'd say it's Miami. No, it's Southern Cal. Better job. I mean, the weather's nice in Southern California, right? There's a song, "It Never Rains in Southern California."
It rains out there now.
But I mean, you got Los Angeles, a lot of players there to recruit. state of California to recruit. Still a high-profile job. A team that was in the Pac-12 championship relatively recently. So I look at it and say, look, Southern Cal got the resources. They are dedicated to win. Miami, you better be winning for people to show up. Southern Cal, they'll show up. And they'll support you. So I think better job Southern Cal right now for me. That's take 3. We do it every day. This time we'll come back. Nick De La Torre. We're talking Gators. How hot is that seat for Dan Mullen? Nick De La Torre joins us next here on 3 and Out. Welcome back, 3 and Out here at Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Kevin, BJ, and Ben. Glad you are with us here on this Wednesday. Florida Gators, obviously that was not what you hoped for and wild all at the same time. 70-52 over Samford. Gators finish up at Missouri this Saturday, and then Florida State in that state rivalry game. And how hot is it getting there on Dan Mullen, Nick Nalatore, Gators territory, joining us here on 3 and Out. Nick, welcome to the show. How are you? Let's see if we can get Nick. Welcome to the show. How are you?
Doing well. How are you?
Hey, we are doing fantastic. And again, I don't know how you even spin what happened last week. I mean, I guess you won, but you gave up a lot of points defensively. What is Florida trying to do here coming down the stretch of this season to, I guess, take some of the heat off? Win? Is it just as simple as that, or they need to have some kind of proficiency in doing it?
I mean, there's already going to be coaching changes after the year. You know, the offensive line coach is gone. The defensive coordinator is gone. So, change is already coming. But I think you might be in a situation if you're Dan Mullen where you need to win these 2 games. I don't know if he survives going to Columbia, Missouri, and having a game like they had in Columbia, South Carolina. So, winning cures a lot. I think Dan Mullen probably needs to win these next 2 games to keep his job, but it'll be a tall task with Tyler Batty and the way he's running the ball and the way Florida's struggled to tackle at times this year. So tough task in Missouri. Certainly wasn't a awe-inspiring performance last week against Stanford.
And Samford's got a really productive offense at the FCS level and the SoCon, but what they did, especially in the first half, how do you explain that? What was kind of the reaction as to why? What was going on out there in that first half, especially?
Yeah, well, I don't know that anything was wrong offensively. Florida kind of scored, whenever they had the ball for the most part. Emory Jones had a record-setting day. Maybe you can chalk up, if you're playing apologists or looking for reasons, maybe you can chalk up having a new coach at calling plays at defensive coordinator. But I'm really missing and looking for that Florida offensive line and defensive line that I saw against Alabama. And they were more physical than Alabama on both lines of scrimmage. And then you look at the South Carolina game, the defensive line getting blown off the ball. Against Stanford, not getting a push, getting blown off the ball, running lanes. I'm looking for that defensive line. I know everyone's dinged up and banged up at this time of the year, but playing against an FCS team, which only has 63 scholarship players, if those guys had offers to Florida, they wouldn't be at an FCS school. So a team that was outgunned and undermanned really manhandled you for, at least one half of football last Saturday.
I mean, Nick, how do you describe everything going on at Florida right now? Obviously, this goes back to last season, maybe like at the end of the year, and you talk about the way they played against Alabama, but it seems to be the Florida can't put 2 good games together, and when they do have a bad game, it's disastrous either on one side of the ball or both sides of the ball.
They can't put 2 halves together. I've been waiting for a full 60 minutes from Florida all year, so not even putting 2 games together. It's wild. After the South Carolina game, I tried to figure out how Florida had fallen so far. Because a year before that South Carolina game, Florida had just dismantled Georgia in Jacksonville. They were top 5 in the country. They had a Heisman hopeful, the future John Mackey Award winner in Kyle Pitts. You had one of the most exciting players in the country in Kadarius Toney. And now we're sitting here talking about, is Dan Mullen going to be coaching the Gators 16 months later? So, it's been a spectacular fall from grace for Dan to get to this point. But if you go back and look, each week there's something. It was the Missouri, fight before halftime last year, the 2 losses to LSU teams that were banged up and had guys quitting. They fired their coach this year. Losses to Kentucky, and then, just a complete no-show in Columbia. So I think you're getting to a point, and then if you throw in recruiting on top of that, it's just been a really quick spiral, kind of out of control for Dan. And I think, you look at the move he made in severing ties with John Hevesy, a coach he's been with since 2001. Does that show growth? Does that show change? And does Mullen get enough time to get some other guys in, some guys around him that can help with recruiting on top of what they've been able to do in terms of, developing talent.
And you're right, Nick. It seems like trying to figure out where this thing kind of went off the rails is puzzling, because this was a team that was a play away from potentially beating Alabama. And as you said, just a few short months later, you're talking about, can they win one or two of these games down the stretch to try to save Dan Mullen's job? It's really quite spectacular when you think about it.
I got the idea because we went into LSU. I traveled to LSU and I was talking to some of their writers, and I'm saying, how is a coach who won a national championship and coached an undefeated team, coach of the year, about to get fired 18 months later? And then it's not really until you go back and put things almost into a list. And then when they did that for me, I'm like, okay, well, that makes sense. That's why Ed Orgeron's getting fired. And it didn't make sense to me because Florida, they had the ball with a chance to win the game with time running out in the SEC championship last year. And then I think the comments Dan made about the scout team in the Cotton Bowl, I think that's kind of a slap in the face to guys who actually played in that game and didn't decide to opt out. That rubbed fans the wrong way. And then obviously this year has been what it is. But one thing kind of just adds on to another, and it's kind of been a snowball that's grown into a boulder that could take out of town right now.
So, Nick, what do you expect on Saturday? I mean, Florida and Missouri, both 5-5. You mentioned the Gators offensively put up huge numbers on Saturday. Do you expect improvement this weekend?
There's 130 teams in college football, and Missouri's run defense is 129th. I know Dan Mullen says you take what the defense gives you, but I expect Missouri to load the box because they have to. And even when they load the box, they're not very good at stopping the run. So I think Florida needs to go in and listen, trust your running game, trust your offensive line, challenge your offensive line to be that line from the third week of the season. And I think if Florida can run the ball effectively, they can get out with a win. It's been a weird series between Florida and Missouri. There's been some nonsensical games that you can't really figure out. But I think it's a very winnable game for Florida. I thought that probably the whole year. But they're going to have to stop Tyler Batty. He's having one of the best seasons in the last 10 years in the SEC. He's run for 400 yards 4 times, joining Leonard Fournette, Derrick Henry. So that's going to be the big task, stopping Tyler Batty, not letting him beat you, and then Florida needs to be able to run the ball effectively.
Dan Mullen finally gets rid of Todd Grantham. I know it wasn't a decision that he wanted to make. He did it grudgingly. I mean, obviously they're gonna Dan Mullen, if and when he wins these last 2, hopefully 3 games, to be back next year. Is there anybody in mind right now for Florida as far as like a defensive coordinator, and do they go with a guy this season, or do they try to give a young guy a chance to try to go out there and prove himself?
It's interesting because you always have to, I've tipped my hat to Dan Mullen and Hevesy and those guys and the job they do developing players, but you're seeing the difference in recruiting in Georgia's classes and Florida's classes. It creates such a small margin of error for Dan on Saturdays, and he has to have a perfect game plan, and then those guys have to execute his perfect game plan, or else you're going to lose the game because you haven't recruited to the level of the other guys. So I think when you're looking at filling out the staff, not that recruiting is more important than what they are as a coach on the field and how they'll develop, but recruiting has to be a factor in the hires at offensive line and defensive coordinator. You start to look at guys like maybe a Travaris Robinson. I know Jeff Collins is a guy that has a current head coaching job right now, but if he were to get let go at Georgia Tech, I think he's a no-brainer hire. He was great here at Florida as a defensive coordinator, Mullen's defensive coordinator at Mississippi State. He's a guy that I would look to as well. There's a bunch of names that that I looked at a while ago, and then things kept transpiring, and now I'm starting to get a head coaching hot board just in case they make a move. So there's a lot of moving pieces right now.
Nick De La Torre, Gators Territory and Rivals, covers the Gators, joining us here on 3 and Out. And Nick, as you said, it's kind of funny you were been asked you about defensive coordinator, and the first thought that popped into my mind was, well, what if Dan gets fired? You don't really need a defensive coordinator at that potential point. I mean, how tenuous is that situation with Dan Mullen, knowing that, as we've seen other schools let coaches go, you have the early signing period coming up in mid-December. I mean, Are they locked in with Dan for another year, or is it as simple as, hey, no, if he loses a game or maybe both of these last two, he might be gone?
Yeah, I thought before the South Carolina game, said on my podcast that Dan Mullen's fine. But at that point, I expected Florida to win their last 4 games, and finish the year strong, build some momentum, maybe finish up with a little bit better recruiting. I think the South Carolina game changed Scott Strickland's view, changed Dan Mullen's view. It should have, and I think it did, just because of the timing of the moves with Hennessy and Grantham right after that game. And then I don't know how Scott Strickland can watch that game Saturday in the first half and still think, fully that Dan can be the guy. I'm not sold on Dan. I know a lot of the fan base is. I'm not sold on Dan. Sold on getting rid of him. I think he could, if he gets the right players around him, he could win championships at Florida. It's going to take him growing as a coach and realizing, hey, here's some deficiencies I have. Here's some deficiencies my staff has had. How do we plug those holes, and how do we get better in those areas? I keep going back to it, but one of them is a huge one is recruiting. So to me, if Florida can go out and look at how I think they should look against a bad Missouri team and beat Missouri the way they should, go out and beat Florida State the way they should, get a bowl game, win that bowl game, I think you could keep Dan Mullen. It's just there's a lot of job openings right now. USC, LSU, Virginia Tech just opened. So there's a lot of good jobs that are open, and I don't know that there's a ton of really great candidates that would come to Florida that Florida fans would, call that quote unquote home run hire.
Going to be interesting to watch there in Gainesville last couple of weeks. Nick De La Torre joining us here on 3 and Out. Nick, appreciate the time. Thanks so much.
Thanks, guys. Have a good one.
Appreciate it. Nick De La Torre joining us here from Rivals and Gator Territory here on 3 and Out. We've got more to come. We'll talk with Rich Stiles, host of the Back Nine Boys Golf Show, RSM Classic, along the southeast Georgia coast on St. Simon's Island, beginning tomorrow with the first round. He'll join us next here on 3 and Out. Welcome back, 3 and Out, here on this Wednesday afternoon. Glad you're making us a part of your day. RSM Classic starting tomorrow there on St. Simon's Island as it returns the PGA Tournament returns to the Sea Island Golf Course on St. Simon's Island starting tomorrow. Rich Stiles, host of the Back Nine Boys Golf Show, joining us. Rich, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm a little tired. Caddy today, 19,000 steps. Other than that, I'm doing okay.
Oh, come on. Like, try doing a 3-hour radio show, Rich. That'll really wear you out.
Yeah, then I'll have sores where I don't want to talk about.
No, absolutely. Look, obviously, this has become an annual event there on St. Simon's Island as the RSM Classic is back. And what are you looking for this week? Weather looks to be pretty good coming up there on St. Simon's Island this weekend.
Yeah, the weather looks like it's going to be great. Might get a little windy on a couple of days, which, the members would like to see because they'd like to see these pros play in the same conditions that they play at sometimes on their home course. And it's a good field this year again for the RSM. Last year we came after the Masters, you remember, in November, and but we got another good field this year. It would be great to see one of the local guys that live here, one of the pros, win. I caddied today with Patton Kazire, and then the other day with Zach Johnson. Both of them played the course great. They shot great. The greens are running fast. The conditions are in superb conditions, and I just think it would be good to have somebody from here win. But you've got a lot of guys that are playing really well coming into the RSM Classic.
Rich, does the familiarity with the course, with the area, the conditions, is that an advantage for the local guys, for the guys that are from here?
Yes and no. I mean, it is because, they play here a lot and they know the course and they know the greens are going to be fast. They know if the wind's blowing, what it's going to do. But, when you're home, I've talked to a couple of them about it, and they say their routine gets, when they're away, they have a certain routine that they do. When they're home, that routine is they're home with the family, with the kids, with their friends who want tickets. They want to get together for dinners, and it just kind of is not the same. So you would think the familiarity with the golf course would be a big advantage, which it is. However, being home does put a little bit more stress on the locals because everybody expects them to play well and everybody expects them to win on the course that they play all year long whenever they're off or just want to practice. So we'll see. Nobody from here has won. Chris Kirk won, but he moved away prior to that, before he moved to Atlanta. We've had a couple of close ones. Webb Simpson always plays good here. So we'll see what happens this week at the RSM.
Rich, you talked last year was right after the Masters, of course, right in the middle of, COVID and the COVID protocols, and you weren't able to have the fans get involved. What does that look like here in 2021 for this week's event?
Well, there are tickets. I mean, there are going to be people that are going to be able to come. There is no limitation. This is probably not the most popular places to play. I mean, it's a very popular place for the players to come with their families. But they usually have somewhere around 25,000 people that come to the tournament, and those are usually numbers that you see at some of the other tournaments in a day. So it'll be interesting to see. Tomorrow starts the tournament. I mean, Adam Scott's one of the well-known guys that's here, and he tees off tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock. So with the time change, they always have to get the tee time somewhere between, 7, 8, 9, 10 o'clock in order to be finished by the time it gets dark.
Rich, you know these courses well. What's the key to success, or I guess playing well enough to stay in contention out on these courses?
Well, obviously keeping it in play helps. Fairways, greens. I mean, that's what Zach and Patton did today. and then just try and get yourself in a position where you can make some putts. But the greens are running really fast. I mean, they're probably in a range of, as far as the stent meter, about 13, which is fast. There's really no other course except Augusta National that really has the greens running that fast. And if the wind's blowing and the greens speed as it is, it's going to be really interesting. You're really going to have to concentrate of where you want the ball to land when you're hitting up into the green. So no big numbers. Take advantage when you can. Go for the pins when you can, and try and make some putts.
Said, where do you kind of expect the leaderboard to be this week? Are we talking if you can get 8, 9, 10 under par, that might be good enough? What do you expect?
Well, I mean, if you look at the averages over the years of the time of the RSM Classic, I mean, it's been anywhere from 14 to 20. So I think you're probably going to be somewhere in that range again. You need to have a couple of decent days and then one great day, and it could put yourself in contention. So I think to make the cut, I think if it plays like it has in the past, I mean, the cut is probably going to be somewhere around, even to maybe +1 to maybe -1. So I think it's going to be, just 2 or 3 differences as far as making the cut. And then, I think it'll be in that 14 to 20 range as far as somebody winning. I'll say 17, 18 is going to probably win this tournament.
Rich Stiles, host of the Back Nine Boys Golf Show, our guest here on 3 and Out, and Rich will have more upcoming on Saturday, Sunday this weekend. Rich, appreciate the time. Thanks so much.
Okay, guys. Thanks for having me.
Thank you much. Rich Stiles, Back Nine Boys Golf Show, joining us RSM Classic on St. Simon's Island this weekend as the PGA Tour makes its stop there once again. We've got more to come. It's 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Good to have you here, 3 and Out. Apparently, BJ was intrigued by the fact that the Staples Center, I guess now the former Staples Center, is going to be known as the Crypto.com Arena, as these naming rights change.
Boo.
Why? I mean,
I'm just
everything's
saying, man,
got a
leave it
stadium name now.
Crypto.
Crypto.com Arena.
Well, no, Ben. The real reason I was interested in this is because everybody's talking about crypto, right? And this currency and the value. And I know Kevin, does a lot of that stuff.
Oh,
So
do
I
I?
wanted Kevin. You were kind of giving me the brief overview in the show meeting, but what exactly is crypto? Where does it come from, and where does its value lie? Walk us through this.
And I'm the wrong guy. And by all means, please consult somebody else if you're going to actually make a financial decision. I have to put that disclaimer out there. But crypto is a digital currency, basically. So do you know the different kinds you have out there? There's like bunches of them. You have your Bitcoins, you have your Ethereum, the one that everybody got crazy on there for a while was what is it, Dog? I don't know how it's either Dog or Dogecoin, DOGE coin, and it's literally like a picture of a dog, and that's how it got its name as a joke, and it actually has value.
But where does that value come from? Like explain the value.
I'm going to sound like an idiot on that one because I really, I guess it's the value that people put on it. And I know for like Bitcoin, they have already said there is a finite amount of Bitcoin. So for when you get involved in Bitcoin, there is only going to be so much of it. And so that's where you kind of get your tradable value of, it's not like.
So there are actual coins. These are not theoretical. There are actual coins.
They're digital coins. No, you don't have anything physical that you hold in your hand.
It's a decimal point.
It's like I've said about the debit card. You're just moving decimal point. But no, crypto coins are, basically digital coins that they mine on computers and servers.
Whoa. What does that mean?
Doggone it. I was hoping we were about out of time. Basically, from what I understand, it's you get these.
It's a person with the white face and the white gloves.
Yeah, you get I guess. So you get all these computers and servers, I guess, doing equations, and out of these equations, they mine a crypto coin. I can't.
What kind of equations?
If I was that smart, I would quit this show and just mine cryptocurrency. But apparently, the value comes from the fact that there's only going to be so much of it, because they've already said, hey, there's going to be a finite amount of Bitcoin, and much like if there was gold. And there's a finite amount of gold. There's only you can't just make more gold.
Okay, but in reality, what you're saying is, but there is no like actual physical coin.
Yes, that is correct. But you can buy and sell it at crypto.com. So they are the ones that are now the new sponsor of the former Staples Center. That was a horrible explanation. Again, I had to throw out the disclaimer. Do not take crypto advice from me or a full accounting of what it is. I just know in talking to other people, that is what it is. You mine digital currency, and that is how it is created. And you can buy and sell it just like you can anything else. And, there are actually companies now who you can pay in crypto coins. Who was it in the NFL that actually got a portion of their salary paid to them in Bitcoin?
That'll be Trevor Lawrence. I think Trevor Lawrence got a bunch of his paid him in Bitcoin.
Okay, well, it wasn't him that I was thinking of. I'm trying to think who it was, and I can't remember. But yeah, there's all kind of guys who are saying, "Hey, I will take a portion of my salary."
No, you can say
in Bitcoin.
You know this is legit. When the Staples Center no longer is the Staples Center, and Crypto.com bought it, that's all you need to know. They got that cheese, even if you don't actually see the cheese.
Yeah, we're out of time. I will look it up in the break, BJ, to put it in terms of what one Bitcoin is actually worth in what you would consider real money. We'll get to that and much more exciting things. Drew Chronic will join us. We'll have Troop Talk Final Hour here on 3 and Out and the Financial Report, all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Good to have you back. Hour 3, and BJ, I did look it up for you. One full Bitcoin is worth $58,600 some odd dollars. So there you go.
I have a better understanding now. You and Christian were
No,
talking
it wasn't
to us.
me. No, you didn't get a better understanding from me. So don't even put that out there.
No, you were telling me about the dog coin, where it's the coin with the dog on it, right? And it became or the Doge
Yeah,
coin.
exactly.
You were telling me about it.
Oh, just because I've heard of it doesn't mean I know what it is. So that's where we're at. But we'll move on to other things like again, if you listen to me about Bitcoin and digital currency, you will probably be broke on digital currency at some point. So no, don't do that. Let's talk about something I do have a little understanding of. Well, maybe I don't. The playoff poll. No, I don't know if anybody understands how they go, but not a lot of change there from the poll put out last night. Oklahoma moved down, obviously, because they lost, but about everybody else stayed in the same place in terms of where it matters. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 there in the poll. But you start looking ahead. We talked about this earlier with Dane Young. Georgia's got an FCS opponent this week. They got a 3-win Georgia Tech team next week. You get past those two, which obviously you should. I think the SEC for Georgia kind of becomes, I don't want to say irrelevant, but you're still in the playoff. It becomes a matter of seeding for you at that point. Who would be the most difficult matchup you could get? And if you're Georgia, who are you kind of hoping would slide in there?
I think for me, the most difficult opponent for Georgia would be Ohio State. And with the beat writers and the analysts we've talked to this year, obviously Georgia's defense is one of the all-time great defenses. But from the folks we've talked to, we've heard, look, if you're going to have even a chance, a thought, a hope of moving the football, you're going to have to do it with multiple athletes out wide and a downfield passing game. And when you look at Ohio State, C.J. Stroud for the Buckeyes has been absolutely remarkable. He's completing about 69% of his passes. He's averaging about 10 yards per attempt, which is elite. And he has 30 touchdown passes compared to just 5 interceptions. And not only does Ohio State have a big-time quarterback, you look at their receivers, a number of receivers, and Chris Olave, who is among the national leaders in receiving touchdowns with 11. I'm checking now. Yeah, he's tied for first in the country. You're talking about a guy that people are talking about going in the top 5. If you look at some of the mock drafts for 2022, you see Chris Olave. I know some have even said, could Jacksonville be looking at Chris Olave? But Ohio State, I think, has the playmakers. They have the offensive design. And I think at least in theory, they have the offensive line that could hold up a little bit against Georgia. Now, does that mean they're going to score 34 points? No, because we're talking about a generational defense. But I do think, at least in theory, with the quarterback and C.J. Stroud, Ohio State would be the toughest matchup. And as usual, I mean, come on, it's Ohio State. You have guys on the defensive line, guys in the secondary that are going to be first, second round picks. I think from a stylistic standpoint, they would be different than much of what you've seen this season. I mean, I know Auburn spreads the field, but not really to throw a ton. You would not have seen a vertical passing game like this. And I think the vertical passing game combined with the talent and the experience on the offensive line is what would make Ohio State really scary. For me, I think and you say easiest matchup, relatively speaking, because it's in the playoff, but I think Oregon, you feel like you would be able to do some of what Stanford did, but to a much more proficient extent against the Ducks. But Ben, to me, the game that would worry me if I'm Georgia and I'm in the playoff is a semifinal matchup with Ohio State.
Yeah, Ohio State is definitely going to pose the biggest problem. BJ, you mentioned C.J. Stroud, and people kind of got off him since they lost, against Oregon. He has been lights out since. The guy's, still a Heisman Trophy finalist. But I think, even though we don't have him on this list, I think Cincinnati would, because the whole thing about it is this: we need to start looking at the situation. The situation is, it's not like this is obviously you're familiar with this team because you was able to play them last year, in the Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl, but this is for everything. Cincinnati going to be coming to the game saying, look, you know how much dangerous a team is when they know that nobody wants them to be there, even though they've earned the right to be there against the number one team. Cincinnati is a team that has, a guy, Desmond Ridder, and BJ, they got some bookend cornerbacks, might have number one corner in the country as far as like this year's draft, but Georgia has to be perfect. when everything's on the line. Cincinnati just has to be Cincinnati. And I think that's what makes a team dangerous. I understand we get caught up in styles, schemes wins fights, but situations determines those schemes and those plays that you call. The one thing that Cincinnati does well that people don't want to give credit to, they play really, really good defense. So BJ, if Georgia is Georgia on defense, but yet Cincinnati scores 20, but Cincinnati's defense does its best Georgia impression and puts that offense in a position to where they have to score, not that they're going to score. I think that favors Cincinnati. And once again, what scares College Football Playoff Committee is a Cincinnati, because if Cincinnati is the number 5 team all year once the College Football Playoff come out, all these things happen in front of them. Ohio State loses the game they shouldn't lose. Oregon loses the game they shouldn't lose. Alabama gets beaten by Georgia. Cincinnati finds a way in, and they play Georgia in the first round or something, and Georgia loses. See, that's what scares. But then Cincinnati makes it to the national championship. Now everybody's watching. So for me, obviously Ohio State is their hardest, because I just think that offense poses a problem for everybody when you got a secondary for Georgia, for which, let's face it, we know legitimately how good or how great Georgia's front seven is. We don't know how good their secondary is. They're not bad, but we don't know how good they are because they've never been tested. Ohio State is going to test them with their style of offense, with a dual threat quarterback in C.J. Stroud. But for me, Ohio State is the worst case scenario for Georgia. But don't leave out them Bearcats, because I know people always say Georgia didn't have their quote best players last year in the bowl game. I don't want to hear that. They were scratching the claw to win that thing. Why? Because they had already lost to a Texas team 2 years prior, and they didn't want to hear, Georgia don't want to win these games. So Cincinnati too, but obviously Ohio State will pose a huge threat.
Yeah, to me, it's Ohio State would be the toughest one. And again, right now, that's who you would face if nothing else changes, which everything could in the next 2 weeks. You'll have to wait and see. But again, I think, what are you looking at here if you're Georgia, BJ? If you can play the next 2 weeks and you win, which you should, you're going to be heavy favorites to win the next 2 weeks against the FCS team and a bad Georgia Tech team. I mean, win or lose, what's the worst case scenario? Obviously, if you win, you're number 1 seed. You lose, what, 2? If Alabama stays at number 2, what do you just fall to 2?
Yeah,
Maybe 3. I mean, I know 2-3 kind of doesn't matter, but I don't think it's one of those where if you lose in the SEC championship game, it's like 1-4. I don't think you have that big of a fall. So I mean, I think the next couple
you
weeks,
mentioned this too, Kevin. I mean, 2-3 doesn't even matter. Does it even matter? No,
not necessarily. I mean, home away, who cares at that point? You're going to play in the same place. But I mean, what are you talking about? If they're 1 going into the SEC championship game, worst case scenario, what, they're 3 at worst? No way they fall to 4, right?
No.
Yeah, I think you're talking about it, assuming they beat Arkansas and beat Auburn, Alabama, then being the 1, and Georgia would be the 2 or the 3, maybe the 3. But for all the talk about, if you win, if you lose, you still get in. I mean, let's not forget that little thing called an SEC championship.
Oh, sure.
And I know you have one of those rings, and look, that's very special. Georgia's a national contender. Georgia is competing for a national championship. Georgia's the favorite to win the national championship. But I have heard some comments, if they lose, it doesn't matter. Yeah, it matters.
No, it does matter for this reason. 1, you want the championship, BJ, but 2, I think you want to knock Alabama out of this thing if you can, because as you know, it's hard to beat a team twice. Much like I think if Alabama beats Georgia and they were to get paired up again, like it's hard to beat a team like that twice. So I think if you're Georgia, beat them and get them out of the playoffs, right? I mean, that would be the best case scenario.
I mean, that's easier said than done. I mean, Alabama's going to come in. Kevin, when's the last time we said Alabama needed a game to get in? Now, I don't know if motivation is going to add any more fuel to the fire, but I just think that Alabama is one of those teams to where I agree with you. You don't want them in at all, because they're the most dangerous team once they get in, because they used to this. Bryce Young, these guys, they come up, understand what it is. Georgia is the best team at situational football. That would be Alabama. And the last thing you want to do is to play mind games with old St. Nick. I think that favors Alabama. You want to get them out of there if and when you get a chance to.
I just wouldn't lose sight of the SEC championship. I've seen so much talk about, if you lose, yes, you have a security blanket, which is awesome. If you win your next two, and you should by considerable margins, you can lose, and there's no chance. If Georgia loses, there's no chance you don't get in, losing to the number 2 team in the country. If Georgia wins their next 2 games, they are in the college football playoff. But the SEC championship matters. I mean, you only have so many of those. That's still the toughest conference in college football. So I just would be careful with all the "it doesn't matter if you lose" talk. I mean, Ben, you have one. You want to get that SEC championship if you can.
The thing about it is, BJ, when you start saying it don't matter because you undefeated, look at who you going up against. Because the thing about it is if the game gets out of hand, and I know Georgia's going to get in. Georgia gets the doors blown off them because they, quote, don't need it. Don't think you could just flip a switch.
I don't see that happening.
Listen, all I'm saying is I wouldn't put nothing past Alabama. Alabama understands they need the game in Atlanta. Georgia, that's another game on their schedule. I just think it's crazy that Georgia don't need the game. So
no, you want Alabama out of there. I'm telling you.
Be very, very careful.
We've got a lot to get to here in this final hour. We're here from Drew Cronick, head football coach of the Mercer Bears. They're playing a conference championship game this week against East Tennessee State. Final regular season game, but it is for the conference championship. We'll hear from him. Also, Ben will sit down with Ramon Foster for this week's edition of Troop Talk, former All-SEC guard at Tennessee and a long time with the Pittsburgh Steelers. He will join Ben coming up in just a little bit. This is 3 and Out all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. We're streaming live at ESPNCoastal.com. You've got Mercer right there in the thick of things in the Southern Conference, a big game at East Tennessee State this weekend. Their head football coach, Drew Cronick, joins us here on 3 and Out. Coach, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks for having me.
And we appreciate you coming on and speak to that ride that your team has been on. Really played well coming down the last 3 ball games and have a chance to maybe punch your ticket into the playoffs. Speak to how that has kind of carried you here the last couple of weeks.
Well, I'm proud of our kids. We've come a long way. This is kind of I guess, it's my second season on the job. Now, our seasons have been a little weird the past. We had a spring season last spring, and then this fall. So we basically had 2 seasons in 1 year. And I took over the program in December of 2019. And so we've come a long way. Proud of our kids. We got the right kids here. They're believing in what we're doing. They're believing in each other. They're playing their tail off. They're overachieving, and they're a lot of fun to be around. And they've managed to put themselves in a situation where they're 1 win away from an outright conference championship. So we're very blessed. Work very hard. I'm proud of these kids. Proud of my staff. Bottom line is we got to go win a game.
And Coach, I know a lot of excitement upcoming on Saturday, a chance to play for a title, play for the playoffs. But take us back to the game against Chattanooga, where they're one of the better teams in the league. It's a low-scoring game, and you guys win 10-6 to set up what's now coming up this weekend.
Yeah, it was a heck of a game. Chattanooga's loaded with a lot of talent and a very good football team. And we knew we felt like it'd probably be a low-scoring game because I feel like our defense is right now the strength of our team, and they're really good on defense. And so our defense played their tails off. I think we forced 6 turnovers, I believe. Offensively, we had some good things happen. I would have liked to have scored some more points, obviously. But to figure out a way to get it done was a team effort, special teams as well. But that was a huge win for us. And our kids played their tail off, and to put themselves in this position. So it was a homecoming weekend for us. It was a big weekend. It was a great day on Saturday.
And Coach, obviously it's much easier to go back and watch the tape when you're coming off a win. But what you guys got to translate from last game to this current game this weekend with a team that's definitely you're going up there to trying to make sure you get that win?
Yeah, I mean, the team we're getting ready to play is a really, really good football team. East Tennessee is an outstanding football team, and they play great defense. They run the ball. They have a tough-minded program. I like them. I like how they are, and they're a team that can make some noise in the playoffs. They beat Vanderbilt. So we've got to continue that momentum. We got to play great defense. I think it'll be, once again, a little bit lower scoring game. Can't turn the ball over at all. We got to take advantage of red zone and punch it through there and, make some field goals as well, and then continue to play great defense and cause some turnovers. So East Tennessee has got an outstanding football team. We were able to beat them in the spring season. I felt like that was one of the better games that we played. I'm sure that they're using that for some motivation as well. But it's the last 2 teams standing, and it's kind of cool that it gets to be decided in the last game.
Oh, it's really awesome. And as you said, the road to prepare you for this, the SoCon, for folks who are not familiar, I mean, certainly fans of Georgia Southern and others in years past who were in the SoCon understand the tradition, but speak to the challenges you guys have faced. As you said, East Tennessee goes and beats an SEC school early this year in Vanderbilt. Sanford last week put up 50 on Florida. Just speak to the challenges you guys are facing in conference each and every week to get to this point where it's obviously going to mean so much to be able to call yourself SoCon champion.
Well, at the FCS level, this is an outstanding conference, and I'm very familiar with this conference. I've been in this league before, coaching at Furman, and you've got all kinds of different styles. Our defense has to face everything from all the spread sets, the air raid stuff, and the tempo stuff that Sanford does, all the way to the wishbone triple option that the Citadel runs, and everything in between. So it's a different challenge every week for us defensively, and then our offense, same thing. We're seeing even fronts, eye fronts, aggressive blitzing defenses just, it's a little bit of everything in this league, and it's a very, very, very good league. And it's a league where if you can come out of this thing into the playoffs, you can do some damage. We also played Alabama this year, so we've run the gauntlet a little bit. and we're kind of, we're hopefully when all the dust settles, we can be the last standing. So, but it's a great league, great coaches, a lot of tradition. And at Mercer, we're a fairly newer program. First season was 2013, so we're trying to build a tradition here. So I'm very proud of the progress that we've made.
And Coach, you mentioned kind of the historical context here, a program reinstated in 2013. Now you're on the brink, control your own destiny for a conference championship, for a playoff spot. Do you allow yourself at all to reflect on kind of the big picture relevancy of all that you're doing and how fast this program has gotten to where it is? Or is that one of those things where you can't do that until you get through this weekend?
You try not to. It's human nature to think about things. And, it takes to have a championship football program, it takes a university, behind you. It takes administrators believing in you and getting you what you need to attract great people and be able to pay people and be able to give you facilities and all those things. It takes a great faculty and staff working with you on a daily basis to help our guys be successful academically. And it takes a staff. I've got a great staff of men who love their players, who invest in their players, who hold them accountable, who are really, really hard on them, but fair. And these kids know we care about them. When I came here, there was a lot of work to be done, and we've covered some ground. We've given ourselves an opportunity here to play for a conference championship in just year two. Make no mistake. Now we got to go play good. Okay. The bottom line is all the things we're talking about. We have a great culture here. Our kids are working hard. They love each other. We're preparing them, but you still got to go play good for 3 hours on a Saturday against a really good team. But we're very appreciative of the progress that's been made here. But it is a group effort. It is a lot of people working together and believing in each other to give us this opportunity to play for championships. And this is where we want to be. We want to be, consistently year in and year out in the hunt, and being a playoff caliber team and a conference championship caliber team and in a great conference. So that takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of people, being unselfish and working together. But I like our kids. I like our team. And I believe in our guys. I really, really do.
And Coach, it's something you always mention, something you talked about, with us before the season. You were saying, listen, I got to be able to love on them, but I also got to be able to discipline them as well. It's something you always be preaching. How do you maintain keeping the main thing with, look, I love you guys. I love our staff, but it's about going out there, performing well and winning these ball games, putting ourselves and keeping ourselves in this position.
Yeah, I think first all starts with my leadership being consistent, okay, and me being unselfish, to the best of my ability and taking care of these guys, pouring into them and investing in them. That's how kids know you care about them. And listen, kids see through, if it's phony, they can see through it in 10 seconds. So they need to see me treating them like I would my own kids. And my wife and my kids are around this building. My staff, our families are around this building. We are trying to build a family atmosphere that doesn't worry so much about the scoreboard, but just worries about being the very best that we can be. So it starts with me being consistent, treating them with respect, being consistently hard on them and holding them accountable, while at the same time investing in them and loving them. Kids can see it. They know when you're doing that. So my staff honors those things. We are I'm a man of faith. We're going to try to honor the Lord the way we run the program. We're not perfect, and we're not going to shove a Bible down anybody's throat, but we're going to run our program with those values and try to honor the Lord the way we work. And I believe when you do things like that, good things happen for you. So those kids can see that. It's real. I'm proud of my staff because they honor the way we want to run this program, which is investing in these guys. Don't worry about, you can't worry about the coaching business, what your next job is, and how much money you're making and all that. Just go invest in people, and all those other things take care of themselves. And our kids have responded to that. And if they didn't, there was some of them that found an exit ramp, and that's okay. You have to have some addition by subtraction. But the guys we have in our program right now, some of which were here when I got here, some of which we've added, they have gelled together, and they're doing an outstanding job. And they know that this coaching staff cares about them, and this coaching staff wants to put them in situations where they can be successful. So that's kind of our three pillars are love, compete, and believe. That's what we build our program on. And we sprinkle that on our guys on a daily basis. And I know it works. It's worked before for us. And when you're sincerely caring about kids, man, they go play hard for you. So we got a lot of work to do. The glue hadn't totally dried, but I like where we are and I like where we're headed.
Drew Cronick, head football coach at Mercer, joining us here on 3 and Out. And Coach, you mentioned the game this weekend for the conference championship, a young program for Mercer relatively. You, as you said, kind of the strangest of circumstances that anybody could possibly go through, taking over a program when COVID happens, but a program still trying to rise up. How do you prepare your kids for what Saturday is? It's a conference championship. I don't know how many kids on your roster have been a part of that at the collegiate level. How do you kind of prepare mentally to get ready to do that and say there's still more football if we can take care of business here on Saturday?
Well, our kids understand the what it means. My job is to get us to go play at the very highest level we can every single Saturday, consistently be the best we can be, prepare for each team the same way, and worry about us. Okay, that's what we had to worry about as the Mercer Bears. Now we got to understand what East Tennessee is doing schematically and who their players are and all those kind of things. That's part of the strategy of the game. But really what it boils down to is us executing, us being the best. That gives us the best opportunity to win. Okay. And if we go do that and we don't end up on the right side of the scoreboard, I can live with that. And our kids, and our kids can live with that. But the main thing for us is being the very best we can be on a daily basis. And then on Saturday, you go in there with a lot of confidence because you feel like you're prepared and you feel like you're ready to go play your best game.
Drew Cronick, head football coach at Mercer University, our guest here on 3 and Out. Coach, we appreciate the time. Best of luck to you guys coming up this weekend. Thanks so much.
All right. Thanks, guys. Appreciate y'all.
Appreciate it. Drew Cronick, our guest here on 3 and Out as Mercer in I guess that she's not really a championship game, but the de facto championship game against East Tennessee State this weekend there in the Southern Conference. We got more to come here. It's 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network.
long time from his career at Tennessee, now doing great things in the radio booth, co-host of Jay Martin and Ramon, nicknamed the Big Ragu. Played at Pittsburgh from 2009 to 2019. Obviously played for them Tennessee Vols and played in 160 games, started in 145, second team All-SEC in 2007, freshman All-SEC in 2005, ESPN All-Mayday team in 2007. The great Ramon Foster. What's going on with you today, Ramon?
Man, Ben, I appreciate you having me coming on, man. That's a heck of an intro for a guy, that went undrafted and played in the league for a while. I appreciate you, giving me my correct due right there, man. That's all.
Well, I'm always give you your correct due. The one thing that people need to know, the things I'm reading off, nobody gave you any of those things. You had to go out there and earn it. And as you mentioned, going undrafted and playing for 11 years, starting 145 games out of 160. I actually saw something today with the great Inky Johnson talking about mental toughness, man. Talk a little bit about your mental toughness and what it takes to not just have mental toughness when it comes to football, but having mental toughness when it comes to life.
Man, but you know what's wild? I talked to a group of high schoolers, man, not too long ago. And I think sometimes the world we live in, especially with all the optics and the connectivity of, just everybody seeing everything in front of you, you see a lot of people's successes. You see a lot of people, do great things and not realizing that at the end of the day, there was a whole lot of work that actually went into that. There's a whole lot of hardships that went into it. And one of the messages I gave those kids that day when I talked to them at the high school was, look, your life, your sports career is probably going to be a lot like mine than it is, let's say, a Myles Garrett, than let's say a Jalen Ramsey, to where, those guys are rare breeds. Those guys, they can get out of the bed and run a 4.4 like it's nothing. It's, a lot goes into being successful. And I don't think people realize that, look, the hard challenges that you have in your life and how you get through them is mental toughness. It is, staying the course. And you got to realize that for the people who are built to deal with a bunch of hardships or a bunch of roadblocks in their life, when you get through those moments, that you inherited a trait, and that's being mentally tough. That means that no matter what's in front of you, you're going to find a way out of it. And that's not to say that you're going to conquer everything or you'll fail at everything, but it's the idea that you just got to keep going, keep moving forward. And just because you're stuck at a roadblock in your life doesn't mean that that's where you got to stay at. So when Ink and I have those conversations about what mental toughness is, it's not necessarily that, hey, look, I'm about to go make $1 million in a year. It's no, I got to go stack up. If it's $100 at a time, I got to, instead of running the 4.4, I got to walk my way down from, let's say in high school, you're running a 4.7 and you got to walk your way down to a 4.5. And that might not be where you want to be in life, but it's closer to your goal than you actually was. And I think we oftentimes overlook what that actually means. And, I've seen a whole lot of athletes as of late embrace the fact that, they've dealt with some mental challenges and just some hardships and depression. That's huge, of course, again, with all the optics and success that we think people have. Most recently, it was A.J. Brown with the Tennessee Titans. He acknowledged that, hey, it was some hard times for him. And to navigate life and honestly to seek help when needed is also mental toughness, and I don't want to mistake by saying, hey, you don't need to, seek out somebody and talk to people when you're having some hard times. That's also being mentally strong too. And with this past year and a half, 18 months we've had in general, I think we all just got to acknowledge that we're a whole lot stronger mentally than we were. And we've also explored a whole lot of things as far as seeking help, talking to somebody. I'll tell anybody this. My piece as far as my retirement goes, life after football, goes to my wife and kids, number one. But it also goes to the close group of friends I got around me to where I can go say, hey, man, today is not my day. That doesn't make me weak. That makes me strong enough to actually acknowledge that I need a little bit of help. And that's where mental toughness comes in life for me, man.
Talking with the great Ramon Foster, co-host of Jay Martin Ramon, nicknamed the Big Ragu, just talking about life in general and football in general. Also played for them Tennessee Vols. Ramon, when you talk about A.J. Brown and his courage, I say it, courage to tell the truth. He get to live in his truth. And you talk about the role of athletes, both collegially, both professionally. Where do you see the role of athletes going? Because obviously you got a guy like LeBron James, for which what makes him the greatest to me is not what he's doing on the court. It's what the player empowerment he instills off the court. Where do you see this? What do you see our role as former athletes, current athletes being, not just for us athletically, but for the world at large?
Man, you know what? When I talked to that high school group about a month or so ago, I had parents come up to me, and I was just, giving my life story and telling them how I was, as a player and as an athlete. And one mom in particular walked up to me, and she was just like, hey, I thank you for being honest with these kids. She was like, because everything is not going to be peachy, and not everybody's going to make it. There's only 1% that actually does. And that's one thing, Ben, that I saw kind of transition a little bit more as the draft continued to move on. You remember in the early 2000s when the NFL draft came on, you saw, let's say, a guy like Braylon Edwards, or that's just one in particular I remember watching where he had the biggest, iciest watch. All of the guys in their custom suits and big chains. And I feel like that image, that picture is a great goal, but it's not reality. That goes for the top guys in the league or the guys that go get a second contract simply because they work their butts off and they deserve that. But in reality, like I know, it's a hard road to get what you want at the end. And going and jumping out on Front Street to be that guy isn't how it necessarily works every time. You'll find yourself behind the 8 ball. And this day and age, with the way recruiting is, the way college programs are, I think we as players, current, former, wherever you were in this journey, just be honest with the kids about what it is. Let them know one thing that I was big on is you can't save everybody. And that means family. That means friends. That means if you got to get rid of something toxic in your life, do that. That means if you got to be man enough to leave your $300,000 vehicle at the club after you've been drinking, leave it so that you can catch an Uber home, so that you can make it home, so that you can see the next day and not harm somebody else. I think us being real with these young athletes, both men and women, is probably going to be one of the most important things that we can do. It's just like seeing somebody who's got, 2 parents who are 5'4". Not anything that's wrong with that, but to think that your child is going to be a 6'6" offensive guard or, a 6'7" left tackle in the NFL. Like, tell people, focus on your education. I had my kid come up to me the other day. He's doing a speech, a 9-year-old at school. And Ben, I know I'm long-winded, but it moved me so much by him saying this. And he said he had to make 3 points in his speech about his dad playing in the NFL and what it meant to him. And he said, first one was, you always got to work hard. The second one was, you got to make sure that you focus in on what your goals are. And the last one kind of hit me because it made me, as a dad, sit back and like, you really do listen to me. But he said you always got to have a backup plan because football isn't going to be your end-all, be-all, and you'll do more things after football than what you do while you're playing. And for a 9-year-old to take that and ingest that and want to tell his friends in a speech that at school, I was just like, as a dad, as a former player, that's the best thing I could give to him is the reality that, hey, even if your dad did play in the NFL, that doesn't mean that you are.
He is ESPN All-Mayday team in 2007, freshman All-SEC coaches, 2005, second team All-SEC and Rivals, 2007, 160 games played, 145 games started, played college for them Tennessee Vols in Knoxville, spent 11 seasons in the National Football League going undrafted, co-host of J. Mart and Ramon, nicknamed the Big Ragu. And the one thing about it, Ramon, that I get from you is every time I do something called Troop Talk, I'm blessed to be able to do what I do every day. People be thinking, why do you want to talk to former players? Because I said, well, being a former player, I understand the person behind the helmet is a person. And I'm talking to the person more than the athlete. They can go to Wikipedia if they want to, see who you are and what you are. But I'm listening to the man talking about your 9-year-old, talking about what you mean to people. When did your passion and your purpose merge with each other? Because most of the time we've been passionate about a game of football, not really know who our identity was away from it. At what point did your purpose of what you're doing now kind of merge with the passion that you instill, with your words?
Man, you know what? Excuse me. I'm glad you asked that too, because I think we all in our life have a pivot, whether we realize it or not. And for me, it was the summer 2014. And Ben, I'm sure you like I am, man. You love your mom more than anything, okay? And in athletics, we all spend a whole lot of time with our mom or dad come picking us up, whether we're looking for our mom in our stands more than anything, or just the conversation that you can have with your parents, whether it's your mom or dad. And that summer 2014, man, I lost my mom abruptly, 49 years old, man, to a blood clot. And, of course, I was mad at the game. I was mad at my ability to not to spend more time with her. I was mad at all things surrounding what death was. I was mad at religion. I was mad at life. I was mad at myself for not making it a point to, spend more time. But it was also a blessing that I felt like she spoke to me a whole lot, and just my movements after her passing in 2014. I still went to camp and had one of the best seasons ever. And truth be told to you, man, it made me realize what life was also. It also made me realize time meant, because that was my biggest thing that I said. When I'm done, I'm going to spend more time. When I'm done, I'm going to spend more time. So for me, a guy that's been in my position to walk the road that I did as far as going undrafted, being blessed not to have no major injuries, I see all things that I did as a blessing. And for me to kind of help out as many people as I can, whether it's through my story, whether it's through my faith, or whether it's something that I've personally experienced. But with her leaving this earth, for me, it made me realize I got to help more. I got to say more. If I can reach a kid, then I got to at least try to do that, whether they want to hear me or not. I'll never say that, hey, you dogged me out or you didn't, try to guide me. Because when met with a situation like that, not expecting it, it made me look at life a whole lot different. It made me treasure all moments. So if I can ever give a person, a kid, a colleague, a small word of encouragement or help guide them through a situation like that, Ben, that's what I learned from that experience in my personal life. It was a lot of hurt, it was a lot of pain, but it also strengthened me to do what she was doing in life too, and that was helping people, and was also trying to help shield people from stuff that that they couldn't really control. And as tragic as that was to me, I'll say this: it was a bigger blessing. I feel like it's been a bigger blessing to other people because I went through that personally.
Co-host of J. Martin Ramon, the Big Ragu, played for Pittsburgh from 2009 to 2019, going undrafted. Played for them Tennessee Vols out of Knoxville. 160 games played, 145 games started. Second team All-SEC 2007, freshman All-SEC 2005, ESPN All-Mayday team. Husband, father, son, brother. Ramon, man, I appreciate it, man. I wish we had more time to do this, man. My podcast, 84 Reasons, about to drop here soon, man. We gonna have to do this again, man, because like I said, I interviewed the man, Ramon. I come away enthused about wanting to know more about the man. Never, ever, ever, ever stop being you, sir. You are a blessing to whomever and however you are around, man. I appreciate you taking the time, sir.
Man, Ben, anytime you want me in the pod, just give me a text or a ring and I'm there for you.
Appreciate you, sir.
This is the GNN Money Report. I'm Matt McClure. House Democratic leaders expect to vote on President Biden's big social spending bill late this week. The nearly $2 trillion bill has been pared down from $3.5 trillion. It includes a large chunk of money to fight climate change. Lawmakers are waiting for the bill to be scored by the Congressional Budget Office. Climate change and supply chain issues are reportedly leading to a Christmas tree shortage. Both natural and artificial trees will be in short supply, and what is available will cost more. Supply chain problems are slowing the shipment of artificial trees from China. Supply chain issues pairing up with weather disasters to slow the shipment of a reduced supply of real trees to market. And Papa John's is unveiling a new logo, restaurant design, and a slightly different name. The pizza chain revealed a new logo yesterday. Absent is the apostrophe, removing the possessive from Papa John's. It's another step in the company's attempt to distance itself from founder John Schnatter. With the GNN Money Report, I'm Matt McClure.
Prices are soaring from inflation.
Prices are going up. Prices are increasing.
Crime is climbing in Georgia.
Violent crime surging not just in major cities, but even in suburbs, especially Georgia.
The more Democrats spend,
$3.5 trillion spending plan,
the higher prices soar.
Get ready for sticker shock at the grocery store.
And Democrats still want to defund the police.
To not only defund police, but to abolish police.
Democrats like Raphael Warnock destroyed jobs, created more crime, and Democrat government spending is driving up prices. How much more can you afford?
We continually are looking at our cost of living going up.
Murder rates across the U.S. are rising.
How much more damage will Democrats like Warnock do? America's PAC is responsible for the content of this advertising, paid for by America's PAC and not authorized by.
And then along came Walker Jones. Want to know a secret? Toyotathon is coming, and the deals will be spectacular. Rates as low as 0% APR, plus no payments for 90 days. And if we don't have the Toyota you're looking for, we can get it. Why choose Walker Jones Toyota? We'll take care of you like friends and good neighbors should. That means using our expertise to look out for you. Walker Jones Toyota, home of the lifetime warranty, on Memorial Drive in Waycross and online at walkerjonestoyota.com.
Walker Jones.
Walker Jones.
Get the best deal from Walker Jones.
Credit on select 2021 new Toyotas. Must finance through SCTF. Payments may be deferred for the first 90 days through SCTF. Interest accrues from inception contract date plus tax, tag, Georgia lemon law, and includes $699 dealer fee. Ends 12/1/21.
One day, they're playing grown up. The next day, they are one. And as time goes by, the cost of college continues to rise. You know that college is important, but that expense may seem out of reach. We can help. I'm Edward Jones financial advisor, Jenny Johnson. Let's work together on strategies to help you tackle growing college expenses. Call our office at 912-634-0200 for a face-to-face appointment.
Edward Jones, making sense of investing. Member SIPC.
Hey, I'm Doug Harris. Our new Toucans lunch menu has been a huge success. We get you in and out quickly so you can get back to work fast with a full belly and a smile on your face. Plus, we've got hearty lunch specials every day. If you come by for dinner, think of us for lunch as well. We're going to treat you right. After all, we're the place for great food, beer, and a whole lot of fun. Toucans, Perry Lane Road, exit 38 in Brunswick. And remember, we cater lunch and dinner daily.
Hello, this is Willie.
Page at ESPN Coastal there on YouTube. Get a podcasted version of the show, Apple Podcast, Spotify. It's there every single day. You can catch all of 3 and Out right there. But a lot to come here this week as we get into another week of college football. Of course, you got the NBA going as well. You got Hawks and Celtics coming up tonight, 7:30. We'll have that for you. BJ and Ben, as the Hawks try to get themselves turned around from a slow start.
Yeah, a little bit of a slow start. I mean, when you had the run like the Hawks had last season, you were going to enter this season with high expectations. And through 15 games, you have not met those expectations, but still very, very early in the season. I think the Hawks are going to be fine. Still a very talented team. And again, much like baseball, and Kevin, you had to tell me early in the Braves season, look, when you're talking about a couple of weeks, that's way too early to draw any conclusions. And I think for Atlanta, defensive consistency, that continues to be key, and sometimes that can be hard to establish early in an NBA season. I think you look at the guys after Trae Young and John Collins, and maybe you want a little more production from John Collins too, but probably more consistency from Bogdan Bogdanovic, Cam Reddish, DeAndre Hunter, those guys. But Trae's at 26 and almost 10, so he's doing Trae Young type stuff. But 6-9, you're fine. Still a ton of basketball to go, but looking forward to tonight's call of Atlanta and the Celtics.
Yeah, BJ, I think the one thing that Atlanta has to understand is they prove it to the world that they matter. On the team that took brought out the best in that Milwaukee Bucks team last year in the Eastern Conference Finals, Nate McMillan, no longer the interim. You are the head coach now. We want to see how good you are from game one up, to the end of the season. But this is the same Hawks team that beat Milwaukee 120-20 like a couple of games ago. So you know what they're capable of. You could beat arguably the best team in basketball. Doesn't mean you're going to have success throughout the season, but it shows that, look, man, when we hone in and get, focus in on what we got to do, the task at hand, and go out there and get it done. But Kevin, one thing that's plaguing the Hawks again is defense. Like, you guys are going to have to make more of an effort on the defensive side of the ball because they still don't know how to close out games. They still ain't getting rebounds. They still ain't boxing out. It comes down to the fundamentals. If Atlanta can focus on the fundamentals late in games, because they got the superstar check and Trae Young. I mean, you got a team in Atlanta a young team is still going to go out there and scratch and claw, but you can't beat Milwaukee and lay an egg, in teams that are better than on paper. So yes, BJ, it is early in the season, but the Eastern Conference, I mean, it might be the better conference when you're talking about the East versus Western. The Hawks going to find a way to make it more competitive, because you don't want to look up and next thing you 9-10 games, out. With a lot of the season left to go. But yes, 6-9, still a lot of games to go. But the fact that you have already beaten the Bucks shows that you can compete with, quote, some of the best teams in the league.
Yeah, and again, you're getting close to that quarter pole of the season. A couple more games, and you'll be at 20 games in already. So that the first quarter of the NBA season kind of flies by while you're still looking at football and all the things that are going on there. But already getting close to about 25% of the way into it here in the young season. We've got more for you the rest of this week as we lead you up to a big weekend of college football, high school football, into round 2 of the state playoffs. Everybody gets to play on Friday this week, so that's a big plus. We'll have that for you as well. This is 3 and Out. We'll see you tomorrow all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network.